Most clients who come to us have experienced quite a bit of mental, psychological, and emotional abuse that has caused damage to their brain and to their nervous system.
I hear this a lot. I know what I'm supposed to do. I even dream about leaving. And then when I go to take action, something happens in my brain and I literally cannot make the move.
They want you to crash out. They discard you and or poke for the purpose of your reaction, that they can then frame you, that they can then accuse you, that they can then use as proof of your instability.
I'm just going to give everybody 3 seconds of a deep breath because it's heavy. And I really feel for the person that's sitting in their car with tears. I could cry with tears rolling down their face because part of the trauma in any situation is feeling trapped. Guys, welcome back to Flip Your Mindset. I am your host, Stacey Uhrig, and I've got Kim Weeks back with me today. Now, if you listen to Flip Your Mindset often, you will know that this is the third time Kim has been on the podcast because the conversation just is continuing to roll. And the topic is narcissistic abuse. And just as a quick background for people that didn't listen to 1 and 2, which I highly recommend if you haven't listened to parts 1 and 2, links will be in the show notes. Go listen to those because this is a trajectory. This is a full story, and this is part 3 of the full story. But I met Kim because Kim was a mentor to me. She was an instructor to me on Instagram. She's known as the Narcissistic Abuse Coach. She was integral in my training to become what was known as a certified trauma recovery coach. I'm now considered a trauma care practitioner through a school that Kim's actually co-founder. It's the Global Trauma Institute. Everybody needs to know about it. Which I always talk about. It's so amazing. It's the most amazing group of people helping you get incredibly knowledgeable and trained, not just informed on all things trauma. In addition to that, when Kim had free time, she was doing these narcissistic abuse 101, 201, 301 courses. And I did take courses from Kim in narcissistic abuse because you guys know, as part of my practice, I definitely hold space for women that are in the throes of that. And it is a very unique type of trauma. And I really felt called to it. And she's my go-to. So getting Kim on the podcast to talk about narcissistic abuse, guys, I don't think you understand the get. So if you're listening, if you are experiencing it, if you think you're experiencing it, if you know somebody in it, this is the podcast for you. So welcome back, Kim.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Thank you.
So good. So good. Okay. So I was writing this down the other day. Episode 1, we defined narcissism. We really talked about the difference between abuse and narcissistic abuse. We talked about the spectrum and the different types of narcissism, and we talked about some of the red flags. After that episode, I am sure that there were people that had an oh shit moment. Like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in, or I know someone, or maybe that's what that was, or my parent is, or whatever the aha moment was. And now what? So in episode 2, we really focused on more of like intimate partnerships, relationships, marriages. We really talked about, should I stay? Should I go? We talked about the difference between a divorce and a high conflict divorce. So important to understand. We also talked about, what's the reality? We did not sugarcoat in that episode. And, I think now what we want to talk about is we've laid the landscape. We've talked about what narcissism is. We've talked about, if you suspect this is what you're in, how do I decide if I'm going to stay and should I go? And we kind of laid it very clearly out. Let's just say somebody listened to those 2 episodes and they say, now what? Now what? Looks like, what's the exit strategy? And also giving that non-sugar-coated view of being honest about what post-separation and post-divorce abuse can look like. So, Kim, if you're counseling somebody in this situation and they say, now what? Where do you even begin?
Well, I'm really glad that you said we're not sugarcoating it. And here's why we're not sugarcoating it. Most clients who come to us have experienced quite a bit of mental, psychological, and emotional abuse that has caused damage to their brain and to their nervous system. And they need clear answers. They need to know distinctly, is this toxic? Is it abusive? One of the tools that I use is a quiz to help people be able to determine whether or not they're in a toxic relationship or not, so that they can come to grips with it by being honest about answers. And when someone gets to me and they go, oh my gosh, that's what I'm in. And like, I've been in this marriage, or I've been in this has been happening since I was a child. This is one of my parents or one of my siblings. I've had clients come from all kinds of situations. This is my boss. What do I do? And the first thing that I tell them to do is come to that realization and get really grounded in it. Because what that cognitive dissonance does is it causes you to question yourself in ways that you kind of teeter-totter back and forth, back and forth. We talked about that on one of the previous sessions. And so you have to come to grips with and settle in your heart. This is abuse. I don't want this. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And I sometimes when I see that with my clients, we talk about the chasm between radical awareness and radical acceptance.
Yes.
Awareness is I'm aware this is not healthy. I'm aware it couldn't be different. I am aware I feel like a shell of myself, that I'm filled with self-doubt. I don't recognize. I'm aware of these things, but the acceptance is, and I surrender to the fact this is the way it's going to be.
Yes, and it's not going to change. Some people call it pathological hope, which I love that terminology. It's like I am so hooked to the delusion, the fantasy, that I'm willing to keep kind of going around the hamster wheel with that. And what we want to do is break up that sense of I'm holding on to hope to the end. And there have been several different interviews online recently where there have been people who have been couples and different things talking about being in that space of hoping, so holding on to that, clinging to that the actual behavior of their partner, of their parent, of their sibling is overlooked. And so what I want to do is support that person coming to that for themselves. I can tell them all day. You can tell them all day, Stacey, that something is not helpful to them, that's abusive. You can do that all day. But at the end of the day, that person has to get to the end of themselves and their efforts in that hope in order to get the strength, the commitment to themselves to do whatever it takes to get free from that.
Okay, so I have two things. One is a comment that I actually got from someone that listened to the 2 episodes.
Sure.
And I want to address it, but then I have another thing that I think is really important. And I just want to really address it because I think it's I think what a lot of people don't understand. The question I got was, and I love it because this is the pathological hope. Okay. I'm listening to the 2 podcasts. It all really resonates with me, but they don't have all the traits. They have most of the traits. They don't have all the traits, or they have some of the traits. So then maybe then it's not narcissistic abuse. And I'd love to know your response. My response was, at the end of the day, does it really matter if you have all the boxes checked, if you know you're in something that you don't believe is healthy for you?
Absolutely. And the DSM-5 has, I think it's 9 characteristics. You don't have to check all 9 characteristics for a person to be able to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. That being said, we can set aside the diagnosis altogether. The question is, how is it impacting you? How's it impacting your functionality? How's it impacting your self-image, your confidence, your ability to be able to feel safe in your home, your ability to be safe in your body every day?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that I'm asking. What kind of impact does this relationship have? One of the things I ask in my quiz is, when you're with this person, do you feel energized or do you feel depleted?
It's a great
When
question.
you are with this person, do you feel better about yourself and your future, or do you feel hopeless about what you're experiencing and the fact that you're continuing to go through it over and over again? When you're with this person, do they belittle you? Do they tear you down, or do they build you up? These are the things that you need to ask yourself. What is the overall, we talk about cues of safety versus cues of danger. Are you predominantly experiencing danger with this person? Or are you experiencing safety with this person?
And and I think it is just so important because you and I are swimming in this all day long, right? So we have all these inferences behind us. But when we say danger, it doesn't have to mean that your physical body's at risk. It could be at risk. But danger can be anything that leaves your nervous system feeling unsafe. There's an interoception, which means like it's a sensation outside of you. You're just sensing. It's that animal, yes. your hairs on your arms, like you sense it. I don't feel comfortable, which usually is I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I can show up as me. I feel like if I give the wrong glance, I'm going to get in trouble. And trouble, quote unquote, could mean I'm going to get the frozen, I'm going to freeze you out treatment and I'm going to ignore you. And trouble could mean you're going to get belittled or berated. Like that's not feeling safe. That's danger.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. Just because someone doesn't hit you doesn't mean they are having an impact on your body. If a person's repeated emotional damage to you or psychological impact to you causes you to feel or be in a state of fight or flight on a regular basis, they're actually causing impairment to your brain. They're actually causing impairment to your nervous system. And they call it hyper arousal or hyper awareness or hyper vigilance. They're rewiring internally parts of your body that can show up on a brain scan, that can show up in diseases that are developed as a result of inflammation. So someone doesn't have to physically hit you to physically damage you. And I think that's one of the things that the family court system needs to get hip to.
Yeah. And this really brings me to the second question I had, which is, all right, I hear this a lot. And again, I'm always just trying to predict what the listeners, if I know, listeners or past clients or current clients or just people in general that I know this is spoken to, I want to predict what they're going to say. They might say, look, logically, I know what I'm supposed to do. Logically, I know I'm not in a good position. And I even dream about leaving. I even envision that I'm leaving. I can see it. I see the whole thing. And then when I go to take action, something happens in my brain and I'm frozen and I am paralyzed and I literally cannot make the move. And then what I hear is, I'm so angry at myself. I'm not even angry at the other one anymore. I'm angry at me. And so now the hatred is towards self. I hate myself for not being able to do this. How do you address that? What do you say to that?
I often address that as if you put a perfectly normal, healthy leaf in a petri dish and it has cyanide and it sits in that poison, eventually it's going to start to die. Okay. It's going to start to atrophy. It's going to start to have impairment. And when I talk to clients, I tell them you have been in a marinade in your relationship that has caused damage to every part of who you are emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, sexually, etc. And so you didn't do that to yourself. Those behaviors were something that were done to you. And it literally causes a brainwashing because they project the responsibility for those actions and behaviors onto the person that they're abusing. And then that person who is abused actually takes on their thoughts. It's called an introject. It's
I want you to really rephrase, say that again, because this is big, because I'm just writing down here. What I hear often is, but maybe I caused it. Maybe actually I'm the problem. So this is where we're at, guys.
This is the mind brainwashing. This is what happens in a narcissistically abusive relationship. The person actually gets you to take responsibility for the abuse because you're there. When you have been devalued, you have been debased, you have been dehumanized, and you are weakened, preyed upon in a premeditated fashion. And you didn't do that to yourself. If someone is out there and they are hit by a bus or get into a car accident, they're not going to be able to run a marathon. They're not going to be able to function as they normally would function. And these relationships impair every part of the person who's being abused. And then on top of that, the abuser projects the responsibility and behavior that they're doing onto the person that they're abusing to mentally train them and condition them and groom them into taking that responsibility. And so that is a part of the abuse cycle. And so even the question that client would have comes from the abuse. It comes out of that conditioning. If you think about how children are preyed upon and trafficked and different things of that nature, it is the same process of breaking a person's mental state down and their physical body down so that they are vulnerable and unable to respond in the same way they would normally. That is not something that abuse victims do to themselves. They are in, and it's like being a frog in a frying pan. When the temperature gets turned on and you don't even know what's happening, and before you know it, you're cooking. That is the abuse cycle. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. That is
look at you and I. One of the things I love about these conversations, and to us, it's just a riff, right? Where we're just jamming out about this, but we can do it because we're somewhat I mean, I know you've been through it, but we're somewhat disconnected from the current. Whereas there's a couple of things. Number one, I love the fact that we're not sugarcoating it because it's so important people just hear it. But I am genuinely aware that the moment somebody hears premeditated, they're feeling even further exposed. And so I just want to take because you're right. It is premeditated. Like we're not here to sugarcoat it, but I just want to honor for a second the nervous system of the person that's listening and saying, how did I not see it? Because now involved in all of this is this level of, I should have been able to. I'm seeing the problem. I didn't see it. I know I'm smart. How did I not catch it? And so I'm the dummy. I got myself into this mix. Do you ever hear that?
Of course. And I have had the same thoughts and the experiences I've had personally. And the truth is, you didn't see it because they didn't show it to you.
I always say it was designed to be unseen.
Yeah. They didn't show you that up front. They gave you an ideal image.
Right.
They gave you behavior that after studying you, after asking you all the questions that they could ask to find out what your desires, your hopes, what makes you feel safe, they literally took in and mirrored back to you all the things that would create safety in your body. And they conditioned you and groomed you. That's why I bring up the premeditation, because it's the same thing that happens with children who are violated. They groomed you into thinking that the environment was safe so that you would let your guard down, so that you would see them as safe and an ideal partner, or see them as a company that was a great place to work, or see them as a friend that was a person that had your back. They didn't show you that up front. That's why I say it's like putting a frog in a frying pan that's not on.
That's right.
You don't feel hot. It doesn't feel like anything's on. And then they turn that heat up in
slowly,
increments that are so minute, you don't even feel it happening.
You know what I used to say? I used to say, imagine you have wallpaper on a wall in your house. And every single day, this person walks away and they just literally take the tiniest chip away from the wallpaper. And it's in a place where maybe there's a design on the wallpaper, so you wouldn't even notice that the chip is there. And they find the other one, and they find the other one, and it's chipping every single day, maybe multiple times a day, walking past the swab.
Right.
And after 10 years, there's a hole.
Yes.
And you say to yourself, it's just the chipping away. It's so covert.
Yes.
It's so designed not to be seen. It's so minute. But when you stand back from it, it's massive. And the wall no longer exists as it had.
Absolutely.
One of the things, okay, so there's two things that are running through my head. And I'll tell you what they are and we'll address them. The one is the why, because I know someone's listening and going,
why do they do
this? And the second one is the playbook. I always say these guys are following a playbook, or these gals, could be a woman too. These people are following a playbook to a T, and the playbook doesn't even exist, and they never read it. How? So we have the why.
Why and how. Okay. The why is because when someone grows up from their childhood, for whatever reason, not trusting true connection, not being able to rely on getting their needs met through honest declaration of what their need is, through if their primary caregiver, say they were a toddler or a baby and cried because they were hungry or they needed to be changed, or what, if they were not able to be responded to with basic needs for nurture, for care, for food, for clothing, whatever it was, they developed strategies to get their needs met however they could do it. And typically those strategies included employing manipulative, deceptive tactics. And so as they continue to grow up, they continue to use those same strategies, and they actually begin to master those strategies. And when they master those strategies in the world that we live in, they are often rewarded for the ways that they behave. And so they get even better. And so when they meet a person, they don't know any other way of getting their needs met other than to manipulate, coerce, control, dominate, or deceive. And if you are a person who is confident, strong, resilient, and you got your stuff together, they're actually intimidated by that.
Oh,
so they need to bring you down. They need to bring your sense of your independence and your capacity to make it without them. They need to bring you down. They call it humble you in some way, so that then you are actually able to be controlled, to be manipulated, and to be dominated. That is the why they do it. There's all kinds of different explanations for that. That is an explanation for why people who have narcissistic personality disorder operate the way that they do. It's typically rooted in child. They say narcissists are made, not born.
Yeah, no doubt in that. And, it's interesting. You were talking about the needs being met. God, I can't count how many times a week I pull out Maslow's hierarchy, right? And the reality is this. I've always said we shed authentic pieces of ourselves to meet the needs of others so our need will be met.
Yes.
So
when we learned that in childhood. And we learned that in childhood.
We learned that in toddlerhood, in infancy, you name it. That need didn't get met. How do I shapeshift just the slightest bit? We were talking about, adaptations and Janina Fisher before we got on here. This is why I'm so obsessed with her work, because it's just so obvious to me. Mm-hmm. We shapeshift. I have a need. My survival depends on it. Physiological, but also safety and security, love and belonging.
Correct.
And I see that as more, because people say I had a great household. I didn't want for anything, but I had no attention. Yes. Nobody was paying attention to me. I raised myself, or I had to raise my parent. They were immature, whatever it is. You had to find a way to adapt, just even the slightest, so their need would be met. So then they'll turn around and meet your need, because that's perceived as safety and security.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I think it's so important we cover this, because these people who are on the receiving end of this type of abuse have, in their own survival, chosen to blame themselves. So if I was just X, this wouldn't happen. If I was just Y, this wouldn't happen. And so they're constantly trying to control the looks, the this, the that, the smells in the house, the sounds in the house, and anything that they can do to keep the person at bay so they don't shapeshift themselves. But it's just so important for the person that's on the receiving end to hear this. It's not about you. You're just on the receiving end. And if it's not you, by the way, it's going to be someone else. And that's, I think, the misconception of this is going to end. And then someone else is going to get the better version, the version I saw at first. Mm-hmm. And the reality is they might get that for until the hook is done and they're loved bomb. And then it's going to start all over again. It's not you.
Yes. And there is nothing that you could have done, can do at all to meet the need of that person. They have a goalpost moving strategy and tactic, because it creates a sense of power for them to have you scurrying around, adjusting yourself, shifting around. They get they get fuel. They call it supply, narcissistic supply, which is your attention, adoration, affection, response. We talked about it in a previous session. They get supply from you through being able to get you to do things, especially get you to do things that are against your morals, your values, your desires, your wants. They get a sense of satisfaction to make you shift in that way. It makes them feel powerful, significant, and important, because without that control, they do not feel powerful, significant, and important. And, that's a psychological, there are spiritual reasons for this. I truly believe this is just evil personified. Truly, I do. Yeah. Because when you watch someone become a shell of themselves,
and you continue to do it,
get pleasure from continuing to do it, and then throw them away like they're not human.
That's the discard, guys.
It's evil. And then go to, again, premeditatedly prey on other people to start that process all over again.
Okay.
So there is nothing that whoever's listening to this, I want you to know there isn't any adjustment that you can make. You cannot look better, smell better, work better, respond better, speak better. There is nothing that you can do to appease a spirit of control and dominance and power. There's no end to wanting to feel dominant and powerful and control. There's no end to it. And so, as Stacey said, if it's not you, they're going to do it to someone else. And as a matter of fact, they get bored with being able to predictively get you to do these things. It no longer becomes the same high.
They don't get the rise.
The same rise. They don't feel as powerful. It's almost like that, drug effect. It wears off and you have to keep getting more and more and more. So either they have to get you to do more and more extreme things, depraved things that harm you, or they have to go find somebody brand new who has no idea what, their patterns are, to start the process over again. And I think it's important for that to be said, because many people who I coach have that sense of, if I was just more compliant, if I was just better looking, if I would just lose weight, gain weight, if I was prettier, if I was younger, there is nothing that you can do. Not one thing.
Right. Well, and there is something they can do.
There's nothing you can do to appease that person.
They can do something for themselves, right?
That's correct.
And this is, I'm writing down voraciously, because let me tell you just what I'm writing down. And for those of you who know, I'm in my 50s and glasses are required. Okay. So what I'm writing down, all the things, the ways this could go. One is there's this playbook, right? And somehow all these people are running the same play, but there's literally no playbook. Like, somebody comes to me, I can already predict what they're going to say, and what they're going to tell me this person did within reason, because they all do the same thing. It's
That's
so
right.
Textbook. Okay. So we can talk about the playbook and the textbook. Then I'm over here and I'm like, oh God, attachment styles. Like, what even brings these people together? And what is this attachment style where we have this push pull, where we have this guy I shouldn't say guy, but this person that's like super avoidant and like super anxious themselves. And then you have another person that's also super anxious and just wants to be loved and wants to be the fixer. And so we've got this codependency. We hear these terms, codependency, trauma bond. That's a whole other thing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have this, we've laid it all out. We can lay it out till the cows come home. We've done this enough for 2.5 episodes at this point where somebody knows it. We could talk about trauma bonds. We can talk about attachment styles. We can talk about codependency. But the reality is it is what it is.
Yes.
Those things are actually really important to be done and understood for yourself as you come out of this, so you can understand yourself better. So if you're seeking another relationship, we want to make sure that you go into it from the healthiest perspective.
That's correct.
Right? But for the purpose of this, I feel like a good segue, because we were talking about there's nothing that you can do, meaning there's nothing you can do to change the outcome of how this person's going to behave.
Correct.
So therefore, the only thing you can do, and this is the hardest one, is to prioritize yourself. And the person that is typically in this, and they're not in this because of this, they're just in it because it's the easiest in for this person that's narcissistic, is you tend to be the person that deprioritizes themselves.
Correct.
You tend to be the person that's the fixer, that's the caretaker, that loves to take care of other people. And you can always see that person as an injured person. I can be the one. And then you find yourself, oh my God, no, actually I can't. So we're asking you to do something that's not rooted in your nervous system.
That's right.
Which is to prioritize you.
Yes. Yes.
To prioritize yourself, to put yourself first. And if I had $1 for every time, I would be so wealthy that I've heard someone say, I just don't do that.
Yes.
I come last.
Yes.
So how do we,
I was going to say, or people who want to be equitable and they want to meet someone in the middle. They want to be fair and balanced. And so what happens in a narcissistic relationship is you start shifting and moving closer to what that other person's desires are, not realizing they're not going to shift in the other direction towards
they're just moving the goalpost out and
they're
out.
just moving that. And so all of a sudden you've moved a little bit, shifted a little bit, your values, your priorities, your wants, your needs. And then in an effort to be fair, and then all of a sudden you continue like that frog in the fire. You keep moving and they keep moving. They keep moving further and further away. And then all of a sudden you're like, how in the world did I get here? It's not just the person who deprioritizes themselves. It is also the person that wants to have mutuality, which is a healthy dynamic for relationship, not understanding that other partner doesn't share that desire. And so they're going to keep you shifting until you shift all the way to their side. And when you do that, they'll turn around and blame you for that shift and say that was your idea.
I never asked you to come all the way
your head. Nobody made you do that. All of those types of things. That's exactly what happens. And so I wanted to say that because sometimes, again, they do not go after people who don't have incredible things to offer. And you start out in one place and then you start shifting. And as soon as you start shifting and as soon as you deprioritize in any way what you desire, what you want to be present in a relationship and what you value, they got you. That's the hook.
That is the hook.
That little hook.
All I keep hearing in my head is the person hearing this saying, how did I get here? And I have such deep compassion.
Absolutely. I ask myself the same questions.
Right.
And I want to, you asked the question about how do they do this? And is there a playbook? And as a practitioner, someone can come into a consultation, start telling me the beginning of their story, and I can literally write down exactly what else they're about to tell me. And then I can tell them what's about to happen, which is what we're going to talk about with post-separation abuse. And the how they do it is that they truly are taught through model, typically in their family systems. They pick it up from what they see in their homes between dynamics with their parents or their parent and, a partner. But also, those people, whether male or female, grow up and they get into their teenage years and they start teaching each other strategies. This is what I've heard too. And now that we have social media and the internet, there's all kinds of blogs, books, Reddit spaces that will literally teach people how to manipulate and psychologically control other people. It used to be just what you grew up seeing. Now it's that plus information.
I wonder if that's why everyone, people ask me all the time, why is this on the rise? And I've said in the past many times, I actually don't think it's on the rise per se. I just think because and the reason why I say that is because when we pull back the layers, maybe do a genogram or just start mapping out what we know from past history, we can see this as a pattern, but there was not language to it. So what I think what's on the rise is the fact that we have a set of vocabulary to put towards, like the idea of, denying and dismissing and discarding and gaslighting and love bombing and narcissism and all these things. That language didn't exist, but somebody can say, oh my God, that was my parents. And actually that was my grandparents. And I saw this and I saw that. Like they knew it, but there was no language to it. So I think part of the reason why it's on the rise is not because it's new. I think it's been there. It's just people didn't have a way to quantify it and describe what it is. But I'm curious and I'm interested because I hadn't really heard that there's like shit swirling on the internet about how to be a key and manipulator.
Yes. And actually, my personal experience is hearing that as people went through high school and college, they had buddies who sat them down and taught them how to manipulate women. Buddies that sat them down in college and gave them the game on how to play women, how to get into their pants, how to break them, how to break their, spirits. It was taught and celebrated. The more you did that, the more people you did that to, and you were able to get away with it. The man, you were the man, or you were the this, and that is, that can happen, with either, section of people. But
locker room talk,
all of that stuff, and it being celebrated, almost like, I'm going to go after that target, and then giving the group chat play by play of how they go through the process, breaking someone down. So this is a real thing, and when you don't know that that is what is happening, that you're actually a part of an organized,
I was going to say
a systemic targeting, and that is for entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that is a whole other podcast on the patriarchy and women being perceived as not equal and objectified and all the things, yeah. I'm going to try to stay on target because I got 1,000 things going through my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, can I take this?
And bragging about it, and bragging about the fact that they were taught to do this because they didn't have a relationship with their father. Their father never talked to them about sex. Their father never talked to them about, girls and dating and, whatever it is. And they learned it from their friends, or they learned it from their fraternity brothers, or they learned this is a part of this why and how, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to give everybody 3 seconds of a deep breath because it's heavy. And I really feel for the person that's sitting in their car with tears. I could cry with tears rolling down their face because, look, we know this as trauma specialists. Part of the trauma in any situation is feeling trapped.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I'm feeling that for whoever is going to be listening to this and feeling that way. It's like I'm trapped. And what I hear often is I don't have options. And what I say is, all right, here's the reality. There's always options. I'm not saying you have good options.
Right.
I'm not saying you have options you like. I'm not saying that one's better than the next, because you could have a handful of shitty options. But there are dials that you have that can be turned.
Yes.
You may not want to turn them, but it's important to understand there are dials in front of you that can be turned. And I always like to use the idea of dials because dials have, ranges.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say to my clients, imagine you have these 3 huge dials in front of you, and each one goes from 0 to 100. And you can dial it. This one is, I use the framework I devised. I'll tell you guys about it. I never talk about it on the podcast, actually. It's called Remain, Reframe, Release. Right? Remain is nothing changes, nothing changes. We can have that thing all the way to 100 if we want. There's a sense of comfort in that. And it's okay. And it's important for the listener to understand if you grew up also in a dysfunctional household, though you may not like this may feel like home in some way, shape, or form. This may feel like the blanket of comfort in some way, shape, or form, because it's the dynamic you're used to. You know how to deal with it. You know how to predict it. You know how to manage it because your parts developed in that soup. And those parts of you that are so strong, those adaptations, They know the drill. They know the game. You may not like it. It may not be functional, but you know it. And so in some way, shape, or form, it feels a little bit like home. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I know that's going to speak to someone. So we have this remain dial, and we could turn it all the way to 80, 90, 100. No one's telling you what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have reframe. How can I want it to be clear. We talked before about this moving goalpost and you following the goalpost. So reframe is not that. The way I present reframe to my clients is, how do we start to draw out, blueprint out, map out things that are important to you? How do we start to find some comfort in prioritizing a need or a few needs of yours that you're willing to have a boundary to, that you're calling your non-negotiable? Let's say it's just one. Okay. How do we reframe? How do we show up in this same system, the same ecosystem, but with one need that's a non-negotiable? So before, everything was negotiable. Now we have one that's not. Just one. And, maybe it's that you don't feel that you need to answer every single time you're called, or that you get that text. And let's face it, I was just talking to my husband about this morning, the barrage of texts and emails that are just a beratement where there's no question, but you just feel like you have to respond. Okay. So you get to decide. I always say to my clients, was there a question in there? Actually, no, it was 3 pages of an email. There was no question. So what are we responding to? Is just a game of ping pong of back and forth? We don't have to respond if there's no question, right? So whatever it is, we find something, one thing, to get them comfortable with setting a boundary, because that's really what the reframe. And I always say to people, boundaries are never designed to hurt or punish the other person. That is not the purpose of a boundary. The purpose of a boundary is to prioritize your nervous system as being the most important thing, and saying, my nervous system can be more regulated if I prioritize it by setting this standard for me. That's what a boundary is. Okay. And then maybe we reframe. Ain't nothing changing. You're still miserable. Then we get to go over to this release dial. Mm-hmm. What's your comfort level on release now? What's your comfort? And then maybe a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later. And so we're constantly navigating. As one goes up, the other goes down. Mm-hmm. So it's important for people to understand, despite everything we've talked about in these 3 episodes, if you are that person that's listening, that's like, this is all me and I'm trapped. Mm-hmm. That is a fear-based, I have no options, I'm hopeless, I'm going to be stuck in this forever. There are dials. You may not like any of them, because with that boundary setting, you're going to get the pushback. Ain't no question about it. And you have to be prepared for that.
Yes.
But that's part of the shift.
Yes. And when you begin to do that, energetically, they are going to recognize those shifts and changes and reframes. They're going to feel like they're losing control of the situation. And typically there is an acceleration of tactics.
Do you
so that's
feel
just
like the love bomb is the first one to come in?
Typically it is a love bomb. It's a trip. It's let's go to a conference.
No, my favorite is
let's
go to the mall and get you a Louis Vuitton bag.
Let's go buy something very expensive. It's going to be something like
I'm
that.
Sorry, I was an asshole. You deserve more.
To be jewelry. There's going to be real or whatever it is that you have been saying over and over that you really wanted. Finally, in the midst of you pulling back your energy, they're going to try to figure out how to get control back by giving you something to make you soften and feel like, oh, this person's really trying. They're going to say all the things.
And it, guys, we're talking material things, but for a lot of times, especially, they're going to look, we talked about this in either episode 1 or 2. They know your chess pieces, and they know the ones that are the most precious to you.
That's
so
right.
if your love language is not a bag and a trip or a nice dinner, but it's just to be seen and respected and to be treated with acts of kindness, they'll use it.
And they'll use it big time. They'll come on real
strong. So then what
strong.
happens, you get the hook. You're like, oh, see, there they are. So it's interesting because, you know, I met with someone the other day and I said, how it's going? Well, he's so nice right now. I'm like, of course he is, because he senses the shift.
Yeah, they can feel even the slightest pullback of your energy, your reactions, especially your reactions.
Right.
And so they will either go into that love bomb, and if you don't respond in the way that they want you to, where they feel like, again, you're completely hooked back in, they will go to more extreme levels of devaluation. And the only reason I'm saying this is to make sure that people are equipped to understand that's a part of this game. They're going to either love bomb you into compliance, or they're going to try to scare you into being back underneath their thumb, and or discard you in a way that is so shocking that you're completely disoriented and off kilter and out of balance. So some of this is, you know, you ask the question, like, what, you know, people ask, what do you do? See, if you're still in it, you still have choices about how you move through this in a way that serves you best. Because if you go into a space of allowing that other person to know that you know who they are, they're going to get desperate and they're going to try to do something that is so disorienting to you that you lose some options. That's really the truth of this game. You lose control of certain things, whether they kick you out of your house, whether they, and I'm not saying any of this to scare anyone.
I'm going to use an example. This is not a client. This was my friend, Nikki, who was on the podcast, and she shared the story. So guys, I think this podcast episode with Kim is like number 130 something or other. And this was like podcast number 10. Okay. So this is a few years ago. I did a 3-part series over 2 years with Nikki Redican. The first 2, you're going to just Google Nikki Redican. It's Nikki on my podcast. And it was a 2-part series on narcissistic abuse. She was not married to this gentleman, but they got pregnant together and they decided to have the baby. And the entire time that she's pregnant, she said, I was like the Hermes on his arm. And then the moment she gave birth, he didn't even stick around for like an hour after she gave. I mean, I don't know if that's accurate, but like he really was like, I think he went out that night and she was still in the hospital kind of thing. Right. Okay. So she's now desperately trying to make this work. She's hooked in. They have a baby together. They're living together. This is a commitment. She said the baby's 9 months old. He's out. He comes home, I don't know, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. She gets up to give the baby a bottle or feed the baby. Something's just telling her, I need to look at his phone. And she sees, you know, he's been out with someone else. He's been having this affair. Well, look, guys, I said this in the first episode. Poke, 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 boom. She's been poked probably for a year. Poke, poke, poke. And she's dealing with it because she's been pregnant for 9 months. She's got to make this work. Okay. So she loses her mind. That's the boom. He calls the cops on her, says that he's on the receiving end of a domestic dispute. They live in London. They come and arrest her. They put her in jail. He's allowing that. He's not saying no. And then he called her in the jail cell to ask how to feed the baby, the bottle. And when are you going to get home? And now you're the problem because you're in jail. And if you didn't do that to me, you wouldn't be. I mean, this is other level.
It's other level, but it's not uncommon. It really isn't.
Well, and I think this is an important thing to see. It's other level normal.
Yes.
Pretty normal for narcissistic abuse.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is telltale sign, guys. This is narcissistic, true narcissistic abuse is other level.
It is. It is. And they want you to crash out.
Episode.
Yeah. They want you to crash out. They discard you and or poke for the purpose of your reaction, that they can then frame you, that they can then accuse you, that they can then use as proof of your instability, of your not being mentally well, of your abuse to them, when the entire time they have been doing, I'm going to use the term, diabolical things to you for the purpose of getting you to react, so that when you react, they can weaponize it. And that is the evil that I am describing.
Yeah.
And so when you lay these things out with reframe and release and all, the important thing to understand is energetically, when you begin to shift and start prioritizing yourself, you have to abandon, and I'm going to say it, sincere communication. I'm not telling anybody to not be honest. Sincere communication may be silence. Sincere communication may be not letting someone know your plans if you have an exit strategy. Absolutely do not let them know you have your plans if you have an exit strategy. Do not let them know that you're working with a coach or a therapist. Do not let them know that you are working on doing something for your benefit or for yourself, or going to better yourself in any way, because they are going to sabotage it. They're going to feel that energetic shift, and they're going to do something to destabilize you and to regain control of the situation. That is the reality of dealing with a person who could be diagnosed or is diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Right. It is diabolical, the lengths that they will go to win.
To win at any cost.
Yeah, control of the narrative, control of you and your decision making, control of the children, control of the finances, control of your ability to move on. That's the reality that you're going to be dealing with. And that's the reality I have dealt with. And I have been that person with 4 children.
Yeah.
At-home mother who felt stuck and like I had no choices. I have been that person who was pushed to file for divorce so that I could be blamed as the cause of the divorce, even though the person told me they were done and they didn't want me anymore. I have been that person.
That's really important. Say that again.
I have been that person who was pushed to file for divorce because my spouse told me they were done with the relationship and they did not want me anymore. And as soon as I filed for the divorce as the person who was petitioning the court, they used that document to say to their friends, family, and coworkers, I didn't want the marriage, when I'm not the person who said I'm done and I don't want the marriage anymore. They pushed me to do it. It's called a reverse discard.
Well, DARVO. So let's talk about DARVO. DARVO.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I know it's reverse victim order at the end. Is it deny?
It's reverse victim offender. It's deny, attack, reverse victim offender. Okay.
So explain what that is.
What they basically will do when they are confronted with something is deny that they did it, attack you, and say that you're the one that's doing it. And so they reverse you being a victim and they make themselves a victim.
Right.
And they make you the offender. And they make you the offender. They literally, it's flipping the script. The old school term is flip the script or turn the tables on you. Yeah. Henry Cloud has a book called Boundaries, and he calls it turning the tables. But that's really what they're doing. They're reversing. They're the ones that are actually making a decision to end the marriage or end the relationship. But they want you to be the person that gets blamed for it. So they will do such horrible things behind closed doors to get you to the place where you cannot take it anymore, so that you leave. And when you leave, they will say that you're the one that abandoned them. You're the one that broke up with them. You're the one that didn't want the relationship anymore, which is completely the opposite. They don't want to take responsibility for that.
What do you say to the person that is terrified of other people thinking negatively about them, that they're terrified that this person is then going to go and spew mistruths about them, that they're going to lie about them, that they're going to, again, make themselves look like the victim, make you look like the bully, make you look like the bad person, when all you want is to be liked and you're a nice person and you don't want people to believe that about you?
I did a whole thing on my Instagram page about smear campaigns. And the reality is that the best thing that a person can do is divorce themselves from other people's opinions of what they're choosing to do in their best interest.
Right.
Because the truth is, a part of this abuse cycle is is a character assassination. And it's already happening. It's been happening a long time. People are already looking at you as the problem in the relationship, because a part of the way that they get people to not believe you if you try to tell the truth is they start that smear campaign while you're still together. Mm-hmm. So for someone who's afraid that they're going to be looked at a certain way, the reality is you are already looked at that way, because they have to control the narrative. And so trying to get people to believe you, who that abuser or narcissist has had in their ear, I'm going to use this term, is a lost cause.
Right.
And when I say that, I mean this. The truth always comes out in the wash. They're going to continue to be who they are no matter who they're with. And who they have been with has already experienced this. And so the best thing that you can do is let them have their narrative. Let them say whatever they want to say about you, because nobody was in that relationship but you, them, and for those who believe it, God.
That's right.
And because of that, unless you have had cameras in your house for the last however many years, there is no way to prove what they are saying about you isn't true. The only thing that you can do is let them continue to be them and continue to do what they do in these patterns, so that another person has the same experience and another person has the same experience and another person has the same experience, and they're all the same.
So I want to add in here two things. Number one, I know you've had it. I know I've seen it. The number of clients whose houses are rigged with fucking cameras.
It's true.
In this situation, if you're listening and you just heard Kim say, unless you've got cameras in your house, I know someone's listening and going, I do. Because these guys are, I'm sorry, I shouldn't designate it as guys, but the individuals who are the offenders in this situation are so controlling. I can't count how many clients I've had who are doing sessions from the bathroom, who are doing sessions from their car, who are doing sessions from a friend's house because they can't be in the car because they think their car is bugged. If they're remote, using cameras and recording devices, not uncommon.
Not uncommon. Yes.
Really common. And they can come up with 1,000 reasons why. But the reality is it's just a way to manipulate and control.
That's
number
correct.
one. Number two, so even if you have the camera, guys, the court doesn't care. Unless you're being physically harmed, they don't care. If your person is blowing up and losing their mind, which leaves your nervous system feeling in threat, Court doesn't see it that way.
And now there are laws being put into place to make that illegal.
Yeah.
To make bugging cars illegal. Yeah.
But this is really important because I think it boils down to this a lot. You know, the nervous system being so designed and primed from survival from a young age to be so concerned with other people think and to make sure that people know that you're a good person. And this is for a variety of reasons. I mean, obviously you guys have heard about the complexity of this kind of situation, but this is why working with someone one-to-one is so incredibly important.
Yes.
This is a very, very challenging landscape to navigate. And, you know, what I wrote down here is this is why coaches are important, because the need for validation is hardwired into your system as a survival adaptation from very early on in childhood.
Absolutely.
Whether you recognize that or not, we recognize that. And so part of what a true trauma-trained coach and person that can hold space for narcissistic abuse understands is that. And they're going to hold the space for that. Yes. And there's not going to be any judgment for why can't you just ... Because this is not a mindset flip, guys. This is not a mindset flip. The mindset flip does not come before the nervous system flip. Your nervous system must accept that you are safe in order to let down the guard. And part of that guard is I need to know my safety is relying on knowing I have everybody liking me. So when we get into these smear campaigns, and that's almost a guarantee, this is part of the playbook. This is 101. And Kim's right. That shit's happening well before this thing implodes. The narrative and the story that's been shared about you, sorry to say it, is not good. Okay. You're always the problem. I just watched, it made me crazy. I was in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know why I did that. I was in Omaha a couple of weeks ago, and flying back, I watched the 3-part series on Gabby Petito. Did you see it?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay. Well, you know the story? Okay. So I watched it. And there's a point, the tipping point really, where this young couple is, you know, in the Grand Teton area, and they're in a downtown, and somebody witnesses him being unkind to her and calls the cops and says they got into this car and I don't think she's safe and you need to go help her. And they find them driving and they pulled them over, and she is a mess. Her nervous system is wrecked. She's in that hysteric stage. But guys, you have to understand, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Okay. So her nervous system is so shattered at this point. I could see it because there's a cop with a camera on him. So you're watching what they saw. Okay. This is not a reenactment. This is the real freaking footage. She's shattered. She's saying to the cop, he says, I'm overreactive. I know I'm not overreactive. But he says, I know I'm not that. And so you can see her pickling back and forth, but she's a mess. And the cop, thank God, says, you know what? Let's take a beat. Let's go sit in the back of the car. You're not in trouble. I'm just giving you some safe space. Let's just go sit. She's asking for the phone so she can call her mother. But in the meantime, another set of cops, and again, all on the camera, you're watching the reality of the situation, is basically saying to the young man, we know you're probably not he's spinning it. You know, she has problems. I think she might be bipolar. You know, she's OCD. You know, she has these episodes. I'm just trying to hold the space for her, but there's nothing I can do to calm her down. And, you know, woe is me. And I'm watching this and my mind is like, because you're watching real time this situation where this young man, he's in his 20s, is manipulating the story. He's creating the narrative, guys, of woe is me. I'm not the problem. I am carrying this burden. Yes. She's the problem. And the cops buy in it. Hook, line, and sinker, because he doesn't know any different. And he's seeing this hysterical girl who can't control her nervous system. And this guy's keeping it calm, cool, and collective and being like, yeah, I know. I mean, this is what I have to deal with. That, guys, that's 101.
Classic.
So that's classic. So she hasn't left him. They're still together, but the narrative is already this.
Yes.
So when it comes to the exit strategy, a huge part of the exit strategy, and this is why it's so important to have emotional support and mental health and psychological support during this phase, is because they are going to try to smear you. And they'll be successful at it, by the way.
They're going to assassinate your character. That's right. What they're going to do. Yeah.
And this is where you and I don't sugarcoat. It's not a maybe. It's such a high likelihood this is going to happen because this is part of the playbook. If this is the way it's going to go, this is the way it's going to go.
Yeah. And they have to do it because if you tell the truth, their image is shot and they're going to protect that image for dear life. They're going to protect their standing in the community. They're standing in the family system. They're standing in their workspace.
Oh, guys,
they're going to protect it.
Listen, the worst I see, and I've seen it many times, is when this poor person is coming to me and they're telling me they've called my parents, they've called my siblings, they're believing him or her. They've
shown up at my job.
They've convinced everyone that I'm the problem and that I should be hospitalized. I shouldn't have my children. So, again, I don't want to terrify anybody into staying. I'm not trying to set up the scenario so you're terrified to leave because this is going to happen. I think what Kim and I are trying to tell you is it's already happening behind the scenes. It might get worse, right? But it's already happening. And so at the end of the day, the part of the exit strategy, because there's a lot that has to happen mentally, emotionally, what's in the nervous system. And you said in the last episode, it took you 6 years, right? Where you're, should I stay? Should I go? What am I doing? They said it's going to be horrible. I don't want horrible. Like maybe I can just pacify this. Like I get it. There's a lot that's going to go through the mind. But at the end of the day, where do you see yourself in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, depending on how old you are?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't guarantee, here's the thing. And I support people as we hold space for what our clients desire. I'm going to meet you wherever you are. If you want to stay in the situation, I'm going to do everything I can to support you having more and more agency right where you are. I'm going to do what's necessary to give you resources and tools and the support that's required to remain, as you said.
Yeah.
But here's the reality. The reality is the cycle of abuse includes discarding. That discard could be a physical discard where the person leaves you for someone else, cuts, your financial supports. They, remove or file for divorce. They, take or try to get custody of the children, etc. It could also be a what I call a silent discard, where they literally just stop. They come home every day, but they have absolutely no relationship with you. They're seeing other people. They're degrading you. They may even bring those people to your home. You may find those people in your home. They go through public, displays of that disrespect and dishonor being seen with those other people, even though you all are still together. You can't control any of that. You have no control over what that other person chooses to do, other than knowing, now that we've talked through this 3 stages or this 3 conversations, that cycle is going to happen. And so the question becomes, what do you desire to do to take back power in your life over what's going to happen in your life? And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. As a matter of fact, it isn't going to be easy. You actually have to rebuild a support network away from this relationship. You have to get a whole separate group of people. I call it having a community of care. You need mental health professionals. You need people who could help you with working out so that your body gets strong again. You may need a nutritionist. You may need a community of other women who've walked through this also, or other people who've walked through this also, if it's family system situation or workspace situation. You're going to have to rebuild your life versus waiting for that person. And I'm not going to say have to. Let me reverse it. You get to make decisions from a place of agency where you are. You don't have to do it. But there are things that abuser is going to do outside of your control, and you can wait for them to do it, or you can start moving in the direction of taking power back over what is going to happen for the rest of your life. Yeah. I was in the position of saying, I don't know what to do, and so I'm going to wait. And I think I said this in the last, and the hot sign was flashing.
Oh, man. The Krispy Kremes.
Krispy Kreme sign was wait. But I prayed for that 6 years for permission to leave, because for a sense, and when I say permission, I meant for a sense that it was right in my own heart and mind. And when I got that sense that it was right in my own heart and mind, I left.
You were convicted at that point.
I was convinced that if I didn't, I wasn't going to be alive anymore.
Yeah,
I was convinced.
And I've heard that. And here's the thing, guys. I have heard that many times, and that could be a real scenario, but it could just be that your nervous system's perception of threat is just so extreme. It feels like you could be no longer here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's the thoughts of not wanting to be alive anymore that many survivors get to that place because of the degradation they're experiencing, the dishonor they're experiencing, the control and manipulation that feels so thick in their homes. They don't feel safe in their bodies anymore. This is hard stuff we're talking about. And I realize we're talking about some very hard things.
Very hard.
And that's why having either a coach, a therapist, a practitioner, a community, a support network is absolutely vital. If that is where you are, you have to have, and I'm going to say have to, from the standpoint of being able to be supported, to have the strength and endurance to go through this process of shifting into a different way of doing life for yourself. It is very difficult to do on your own. There are people that have done this without. I didn't have a coach. I couldn't find anybody. I went and talked to, I don't know how many people, but I did have a therapist. And I had a therapist that was very direct.
And I should say, not every therapist knows narcissistic abuse. So you got to get really specific. Kim, I know, just because you and I are peers in the back end, that you're developing a community.
I am.
Can you talk a little bit about this? Because I just think the timing is very apt.
Yeah. Yeah. My community is called Stand Firm. I call it the Stand Firm Sisterhood. It is for people who are in coming out of or dealing with the aftermath of dealing with toxic relationships or narcissistic abuse. There is a place that you can go to deal with we talked about the withdrawal symptoms, the addiction that is happening in your system. To get answers and supports, I'm going to be having an entire curriculum that takes you through the 7 steps of getting and breaking away and staying away from these types of environments. Because if you don't do the work internally, you'll just find another person who has the same characteristics and patterns, and you will go through that abuse cycle with a different face and a different name. A part of this is doing our own internal work, so that when we come up against something familiar that we are accustomed to, that we begin to have a different way of responding to those things. It's going to be a place of inspiration. It'll be a place where if you're having a rough day, you can go into the community and say, I am really struggling today. Can someone please just give me a little bit of light? And people can gather around that person and say, you can do this. Don't respond to that text message.
That's right.
Call that person back. And then twice a week, we're going to have what are called ritual calls, where I will come in and I will do some real-time live support. So you will have a course curriculum, and you also have live supports weekly, as well as daily accountability for choosing yourself, for prioritizing yourself.
So
because
important.
that's what it takes. It takes an accountability, because our patterns are so hardwired from our childhoods and or the experiences we've had. And so a big part of this agency and taking your power back is recognizing our accountability to make choices that serve us moving forward. Stand Firm is called the community.
Where can people learn information about that?
If they want to find out information, they can send me the 2 ways. They can send me an email at coaching@KimberlyWeeksCoaching.com, or on Instagram, send me a DM at I am Kimberly Weeks. I will send over some information to get you started. And honestly, what I wanted this community to be, for us who coach, who are practitioners, one-on-one coaching is often out of reach for cost reasons, for long term, for many people. This community, for less than half of what one of my sessions are a month, you will get an entire year of being a part of this community. And it's a 12-month program, because in order for those patterns to be broken, you need that accountability.
No doubt.
Over time, that support, and to have people who are doing the same thing you're doing. So not only do you have access to anything as it relates to me on a twice a week live, but you're going to have access to people daily who can support what's going on in your actual real-time walk.
Guys, let me explain something to you. If I found myself in the situation that we've been describing, there is no part of me that wouldn't be jumping on that. Kim knows, if I've got a situation with a particular client that's like, not that I can't handle it, but I'm looking for additional input. The person I call is Kim. The person I email is Kim. She knows her shit. You would be in the best of hands. Anybody that is going through this, and there are plenty of people that I have recommended you to, you are the GOAT, in my opinion, of accessibility in this space. And this is why I asked you to come on to the podcast. I know a lot of people that coach in this space, and I think they're all wonderful, by the way. But I just know that you know from personal experience, from professional experience, the kind of training you've gone through, the kind of knowledge that you have above and beyond narcissistic abuse, everything I know about trauma and conflict and rupture and repair, I know from Kim, guys. So if you are, and her cohort, Dr. J and Atra and Julia, these are the people that I've learned from. And they are all the best, in my opinion. And if you've listened to this podcast and you think I know what I'm talking about, I learned it from Kim. So please go to Stand Firm, email her, coaching@KimberlyWeeksCoaching.com. Go to Instagram. I am Kimberly Weeks. Contact her. She will respond. What a lovely thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just ask.
I'm literally, I call it building the plane while I'm flying, because this concept came to me a few months ago. Yeah. And I'm doing all of the, recordings. I'm creating all of the worksheets and all of the different checklists and all the different things that are required. I know that I needed this. Boy, did I need this. I went through this the hard way. I did have my therapist, but my therapist never told me anything about narcissistic abuse. Right. I didn't know anything about it until I had to start doing my own research, right. And getting my own training. And I want to make it easy. I want to equip people, equip women so that you understand neurobiologically, somatically, energetically, spiritually, emotionally, what's really happening, and you can take command of your healing process. And it doesn't have to take you 6 years. It doesn't have to take you 10 years. It doesn't have to take you, the same amount of time, because you don't have the knowledge to understand what's really going on.
Guys, if you're drowning and you're looking for the life jacket, Kim is your life jacket. Please listen to me. I don't do this with every guest.
I'm literally going to say, Stacey, this is so common.
No, they know. My podcast people know I don't do this with all of my guests. But it is so genuinely important to me that the people that are listening to this, that see themselves in this, because I know how complex it is. That if you're looking for a sign, here's your sign. Okay. Also, you mentioned, Kim, a survey or a quiz of some sort. Yes. Where can people find that?
So I'm going to, when they send me their message, I will send them that quiz. Because the first thing I want them to be clear about is what they're in. I want from their own answers for them to be clear about what they're in, so that they're able to, and I can actually send that to you and drop it to you so that you have it. I'll do that.
Do you want me to put that in the show notes?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll put that in the show notes. What do you want people to walk away with? I want to give you the last word.
That this is not the end. I say this on my website at the, all of the messaging, that trauma and this experience in these relationship dynamics is not the end for you, that there is hope for you. And that hope is not going to be rooted in that abuser changing. It's going to be rooted in your capacity to choose your way to freedom. That is what I continue to tell people. You have choices. Those choices have never been stripped from you, even though it may feel that way. That this situation that you have found yourself in, or that you are currently in, does not define your life. There is so much more for you. I am a witness that you can take your life back, reshape it, discover who you are, and walk in the purpose that you were created for. You can absolutely do it. You can be happy again. You can have joy again. You can wake up in your bed in the morning safe again. And you can find relationships that align with what you really want. And the first one is the relationship you have with yourself. That's the biggest part of this healing process, is rediscovering a relationship with yourself, or discovering for the first time one that's healthy, one that's loving, and one that chooses what's right for you. That's what I hope for every one of my clients. I hope to work myself out of a job. I hope to support them so that they are able to take care of themselves in a way that is, everything inside of them is able to shine. And so I want to help you do that in this community. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, I want to help you do that there too.
Guys, thank you, Kim. Honestly, this has been a great series. I've sent it to so many people already, parts 1 and 2, and everybody's just been loving it. I know this is going to be a third part that they're going to love. And guys, we understand that this content's heavy. We really, really do. And there's no benefit to you for us not to be brutally honest and to be completely unfiltered about the reality of the situation, because our job is not to just sit here for clickbait and to get people to watch our shit. We don't really actually care about that. We really don't. What we're really here to do is help the people that are willing to listen to this, see themselves in this, resonate with it, unfortunately, and feel seen, heard, understood, know that there's an option. I know the Stand Firm is going to be a great option for people on a lot of ways, and that you do not have to do this alone. So if you've stuck with us for all 3 episodes, I am internally grateful. I hope that you have found the content to be of value. And honestly, the most important thing here, it's really not the most important thing, but my gosh, if you're listening to this and it's not you, but you know someone that it is, send this to them. Share it, tag someone in it, flip it, subscribe to it, whatever it is, send it along. Get the message out, because it's important. And I don't think we can comprehend the number of people that are living this in secrecy, especially because these offenders, gosh, they give a very different vibe outside of the home, outside of the car, outside of the workforce. Okay. So they're masking all the time. They're code switching all the time. They're showing different versions of themselves all the time. You're not alone in that. And so there are lots of people suffering in silence for fear that nobody will believe them, because typically they're charismatic. Typically they've rooted themselves in the community in a powerful way, or at work in a powerful way, or within the family. Everybody loves them, but gosh, behind closed doors, it's a very different scene. And that's part of what can make you so disoriented. And it's really important that you understand that we understand that.
Yes, that would be the last thing I would say. I believe you.
100.
I believe you. Yeah. And you will not have to convince me or anyone in my community that what you're saying is real, is valid, and it matters.
It's the best way to end it. Thank you, Kim. It's been a pleasure. I know it hasn't been the easiest of sessions, but this has been fantastic. I'm genuinely grateful for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Stacey.